Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be replacing the shelf in the cabinet underneath my kitchen sink. A couple of months ago I had an issue where the floor in the cabinet got wet and deformed and I need to replace that. Today I'll be going through all of the steps that I used to do that and the math behind it. The first thing that we have to consider is the material that we are going to be using. What was here before was particle board, and the big problem with particle board is that if it gets wet, it warps and deforms. And I had a problem a couple months ago where I had this joint right here, had a leak in it and got the particle board wet, and that's the primary reason that it needs to be replaced. I'm going with 3/4 inch plywood, which is definitely overkill for what I am doing. However, I had some in sufficient quantity that was readily available that I had sitting around the house that I was able to make work. This is the 3/4 inch thickness there, and that's the finished side on that area. The next thing we want to do is look at the area that we need to cover with the plywood. We want to cover the entire area from this wall over here all the way over to this wall here. So we need to take the measurements for that. The boards have to sit on each of these three boards here, and these are fairly narrow. Those are only 3/4 of an inch wide a piece. This front shelf here, it's kind of hard to see, but if you look at the black mark on the bottom of the stick, there's actually a little bit of a lip there, so that's on top of the lip, and then if I just go right behind that, you can see the black mark disappears, and the area from the back of that to that area, that board is 3 inches wide, so we have a little bit of room to play with there. Ideally, we would like to cover this with one flat sheet of plywood. The dimensions that we have, and these are from measurements I took earlier, are the inside dimension from all the way over here to all the way over here. That is 36 inches. And the inside dimension from inside this lip here to the back wall is 23 inches. We also need cutouts for the water pipes. The water pipes stick out roughly 4 inches from the wall. Here we have the hot water pipe, the cold water pipe, and the feed pipe to the dishwasher. Those knobs are emergency shutoffs, so we want to have access to those in the event that we need to turn the water off in a hurry. If you think about graphing this, I'm using this very back corner here. This would be our 0 point on a graph, and it would sort of be flipped upside down from the way that we're looking at it. But this pipe is at roughly 14¼ inches, and this is at 22 inches from the center of the pipe out from this wall. So here to this point we have a poorly drawn diagram of what we ideally would like to have. One piece with the areas for the cutouts, a rectangle, so it's all nice and stable and would be good to go. Now that we have our ideal layout that we would like to do, we have to start looking at things that we can't do for physical reasons or modifications that we need to make. The pipes being out 4 inches from the wall, we can't just cut a hole in the plywood and have the pipes go through because we have no way to get the board and plywood around the pipe. So we have to cut a slit out for the pipe to go around. Another major issue is actually getting these pieces in there, because the cabinet door opening, this diagonal from here up to here, is 24 inches. So we have no way to get the board in and twist it and get it flat there. So we have no option but to cut it in two pieces. So the next question becomes, how do we cut it in two pieces to have it remain stable and do everything that we want? For maximum stability, we would like to have both pieces of the board that we cut be supported by this center board in some form, so it's supported on both sides as well as the front. The center board goes from 18.5 to 19.25 inches away from the edge wall, and that center divider goes from 17 inches to 20 inches away from the wall. Here is our updated diagram with the cuts labeled in the dotted line of where we want them. There are some options of how to do these cuts. However, I've decided for aesthetics to line up the cut closest to the cabinet that can be seen the most easily, to line that up with the right edge of the board that separates the two cabinet doors, and have it go through the midpoint of the lateral board. And I've decided to have it connect to the cutout of one of the pipes, just mostly to make that cut shorter. One final note before we start cutting the plywood and turning it into the final piece is it's a lot easier if you err on the side of making it a little bit too big, because it's a lot easier to cut a big piece to make it smaller than to cut a small piece and make it bigger. And here we have the rough cut of our board. So a couple things to note here. You can see where it is cut in the middle. If we zoom in here, you can actually see that I have drawn a line in pencil that's the center point of where that central board goes through, and I've marked the middle spot of the height of the board. A couple other things to note: there are a couple of cutouts here and here, and if we look inside the cabinet, you'll see there are two support boards. There's one there and there's another one back there that's very difficult to see, but I had to make cutouts for those to go around the boards to get them to fit. And for the final part of this process, we will put these boards in and see how it fits. And you can see they fit in there pretty tightly, and they don't move around a lot, and they're firm enough that they can hold more weight than I would ever put on here. I may still trim down this edge over here a little bit because this wall is a little flimsy, and I may just trim that up to make it a little better. And you may be wondering why I have this stick, but that was from me making things a little bit too big and cutting it down to the proper size afterwards. I have decided I'm going to be using a dark stain and polyurethane combination to coat the wood to make it easy to clean and to make it look a little bit nicer and to give it a little bit more durability over bare wood. As a general rule of thumb, the more time and effort you put into making sure that the prep before a coating goes on, whether it be stain or urethane or paint, and whether the material be wood or metal, the better the result is going to be after the final coating is applied. For wood, the primary way to do that is by sanding, starting with rougher sandpaper and going to progressively smoother sandpaper. How sandpaper is measured and the roughness of it is the grit of the sandpaper. What the grit measures is the number of sharp particles per square inch of the sandpaper. So a number with a lower grit has fewer particles per square inch that are sharp that will actually do the sanding. Here we have a 40 grit sandpaper, and you can see it's fairly rough. You can see all the little bumps there. Next we have a 120 grit where you can see it's quite a bit smoother. And over here we have a 400 grit and a 1500 grit. And in the 400 grit, if we zoom in real close, you may be able to see the little lines and spots there. And if we go to the 1500, the particles are so small that it really just looks like a flat piece of dark gray paper, even by the naked eye. After much sanding, coating, resanding, recoating, and waiting for stuff to dry, it's finally at the point where I feel like we can put it in there and be done and not have to worry about it anymore. As this is going to be going inside the cabinet, there are some blemishes that I'm not too worried about, such as this here. That's a spot where the stain did not take, and I tried to correct that but was not able to, and decided that since it's in there and it's not going to be seen, I'm okay with leaving that there. As a couple other changes, I did end up sanding this edge down a little bit just to get it to fit better, and I cut a little bit more out from this corner to give extra room to the hose going to the dishwasher. And there we are. And Emmett is very happy with the new cabinet floor.